The following program is a special presentation of the Big Ten Network, produced in association with the University of Wisconsin.
The University of Wisconsin women's hockey team has won back-to-back national championships in the last 2 years. Next, we'll meet a woman who very quietly did the work decades ago that allowed these young women athletes the chance to win those trophies. That's next. Stay with us. Here's a little shocking bit of history. The Big Ten has only recognized women's athletics since 1981. And while some young women participated in sports as early as the late 1800s, it wasn't until 1974 that the University of Wisconsin had varsity sports for women. That fledgling program, helped along by Title IX, was helmed by Kit Saunders-Nordeen, the first official director of women's athletics. And Kit joins us today on Wisconsin Reflections. Hi, Kit.
Hi, good to be here.
Good to be here. Did you think you were doing the stuff of history when you first started cobbling together a women's sports program? Did it feel historic to you? Because it really is.
No, it didn't. It just felt like something that we should be doing.
Yeah. And how hard was it?
We didn't think of it as being hard, especially in the beginning, because the students were really the ones that did a lot of the work.
Yeah. Not every male administrator and coach was your ally. How tough was that?
Well, there were a few people who spoke to me when I first came into the department, but not very many. But things changed. It really was amazing how they felt differently about it.
Was there a moment that you thought of as a turning point where it's like these guys are finally getting it, that this is a good thing?
Not that I can put my finger on.
Or has it happened yet?
Oh, sure.
Oh, I have two daughters who competed in sports in high school. The women of my generation had just started to do it. I'm struck by the profound effect that athletics has on young women. What effects do you think those are, especially how it affects them in their life after sports?
Well, I think it gives them a lot of confidence. They had to have had some probably to get into the sports in the first place, but I think it gives them a lot of confidence and a sense of having accomplished some things, and that you know, it's kind of like I knew I could do it, kind of an attitude. There was a moment when reality dawned on Elroy Hirsch in his office, and it had to do with the UW women's crew team. Do you remember that incident? I remember it well.
Tell me about it.
Well, I had been at a Big Ten meeting, and I pulled into the parking lot, and there were all these TV vans out there. I thought, oh, somebody must be having an interview. So I walked up the stairs, and I had to walk through Elroy's outer office to get to my office. And there were some members of the crew team. They're disrobing in front of them. Cameras were rolling.
The women's crew team, right?
Yes, the women's crew. They were trying to make the point that they had no locker room to change in. And so I kept going past there, and I didn't get past Otto's office, Otto Breitenbach's office. Everybody on the athletic board was in there, and they kept saying, "Get out there and stop that." And I said, "I can't. The TV camera's already rolling. Nothing I can do."
Did they make their point?
They made their point.
And what happened after that?
Well, there was more sharing of locker space, but they really didn't. And we did find a locker room for them, a temporary one, but it was in the basement of one of the short course dormitories. They still had to walk out in the cold and everything. So until we have this new boathouse, it was still kind of tough.
Henry Aaron carries with him a certain bitterness, even though he had a tremendous career. Do you carry any anger with you in terms of how you were treated in the early days?
No, I don't, because I just feel so good about the students that helped get it going, and that we were doing something we wanted to do for a long time. I don't feel any resentment.
The budget when you started out was $117,000 for women's sports. I think it's now close to $9 million.
Right.
How do you feel when you watch the Badger women's basketball team or hockey team or track or soccer, now that they have the fully vested resources, or nearly fully vested resources, that they were once denied? That has to be pretty satisfying.
It feels really good, of course.
Does anyone remember the day? There is a certain lack of historical perspective that I think young athletes have, sometimes young athletes of color, young female athletes, that what they have wasn't there just 20 years ago. Do you think they appreciate the battle that was won?
I don't think they think about it. I think because they have, the athletes we have now have pretty much come up with opportunities, come up through school with opportunities, which is great.
Was there one moment that you were on the sidelines and you thought, this is how it's supposed to be, we finally got there, where you felt really satisfied?
I don't think I could point to one moment.
2 moments?
It's very hard to do that because I followed every sport so closely.
Right. Is there a women's sport we should have that we don't?
I don't. I think we're fine right now because I loved lacrosse. That was one of the things I could get out and play, but it's not really taken hold in the Midwest yet for women. So I think we're doing well with what we have.
There was a time when the University of Wisconsin cut men's baseball, and there was some blowback against women's sports. It was viewed as balancing out the Title IX numbers and everything. Was there rancor at that time?
Well, there was, and it wasn't just the Title IX thing either. It was, we were in a very bad budget situation. Income was really down in the department, and in order to balance it out, and because of Title IX, we did have to do that. And baseball was the one that got it, just because we almost never even got to play a game here.
Because of the snow and the weather, yeah. And I agree. When we come back, I'm going to ask you to list some of the women you think should be in the Wisconsin Women's Sports Hall of Fame. You know, some of your favorites that you really think help put the programs on the map. And also I want to ask, will there be a time when a women's sport is an income sport? We'll be right back. Stay with us.
This production of Wisconsin Reflections is produced by University Communications at the University of Wisconsin-Madison.
Consider this. There's a public university that consistently ranks among the top in the number of Peace Corps volunteers and in the number of graduates serving as CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, whether they are leading corporations or changing the world. The next time you see people doing extraordinary things, they are probably Badgers. The University of Wisconsin-Madison. Forward thinking.
Hi, welcome back. We're with Kit Saunders-Nordeen, who helped put together the University of Wisconsin Women's Athletic Program. Kit, when will there be a women's income sport? There's still some tension between men's and women's athletics. The men's income sports, primarily football, basketball, at Wisconsin hockey as well, are relied on to fund all sorts of men's and women's non-income sports. Do you foresee a day when there are women's sports that can generate enough revenue for themselves that they're independent?
Well, I could think that possibly women's basketball would be the one that could do it. But it's hard because you need to have a real huge spectator base.
Right.
And it's increasing. Spectator base is increasing, but I think we're a ways off from really becoming, self-sufficient on that.
You are bigger time. You threw the ball up at the first women's basketball game at the Kohl Center.
I practiced for that.
The officials always screw that up.
I practiced it with the guys that were working out with the women's teams to be sure I could get up high enough.
How did that feel that day when all of a sudden the Badgers women's team is playing in this beautiful facility?
It was awesome. I remember being awestruck looking up from the floor.
Yeah. Are there any specific athletes that you remember? You alluded to how certain athletes really helped get the programs off the ground. Were there certain athletes who were leaders in that activity that stand out in your mind?
Well, I can think of Sue Ela and Carrie Graves with rowing. And Sue, to this day, is still helpful. Sue and Jay, both Jay Mimmy, her husband, were really right up there.
The atmosphere of women's athletics and women's athletic culture is different than men's. I had daughters who competed in high school, and I always said, don't act like the guys. You guys have your own athletic culture. Do you think that's true, first of all, and how does it manifest itself?
Oh, I do think it's true. I think that in women's sports in general, women's sports can stand on its own pretty well. And it's enjoyable for people to watch. And to me, it's always been more important. Participation has always been more important for me because that's what we worked for so much. So I guess I'm a little bit biased in that regard.
This income, non-income sport thing, just as a Wisconsin grad and as a fan, I really love the non-income sports because to me they speak to the broader academic proposition. And those athletes seem a little less sometimes isolated from the general student body. The amount of time required for the income sports, frankly, is staggering. But there's something ennobling about a university that can support all these different sports for young men and young women. Do you have any observations on that?
I think that's really an important point, too, because the sports, we like to think of sports for sports' sake and just the fun of competing, and I think that the non-revenue sports have more of that. Although, let's face it, all the sports on the Big Ten school level, the student athletes are very intense and very involved and very dedicated.
We have a picture of you with another famous woman in sports history, Billie Jean King. And can we go to that picture? I want to just find out the little backstory on this. And what she was here, is that how it happened that she came to Madison?
Yes, this was going to be an amazing fundraiser for the Women's Intercollegiate Sports Club, which was the group that really helped us quite a bit in the early days. And we found out, we picked up Billie Jean at the airport and were told that she wasn't going to be able to play because she had a bad knee that she was nursing along. So then they were going to send somebody else that didn't know where that couldn't come, and then the person they sent landed with this giant dog. I'm not thinking of her name. She's a good tennis person. This giant dog, and we picked her up at the airport and brought her into the Edgewater Hotel with this big giant white poodle. And she played, and then well, anyway, we ended up, one of them even had to wear one of our tennis players' uniforms. So it was crazy, and there were people rapping on the sides of the field house, and some of them was because they were so angry. And John Powell stepped in and helped with it and everything. It wasn't one of the neatest days of my life.
How active are your female athletic alumni now? The program is developed enough to have a generation of alums who can come back and support the programs. Are you seeing that?
We're seeing it somewhat, especially in sports like basketball. But it really hasn't developed to that point where it's as much of a monetary thing as for men's athletics.
When we come back,
because we don't have a sport like football, that's been going all those generations.
Right. I'd like to talk a little bit about how young male and female athletes relate to each other now, sharing the same facilities, weight rooms, the shell, all that sort of stuff. We'll be back with Kit in just a minute. Stay with us. Thanks. Hi, we're back with Kit Saunders-Nordeen, the woman who essentially helped create the University of Wisconsin-Madison women's athletic department over the last several decades. Kit, what was the toughest battle you had to fight in the early goings? The most frustrating?
A lot of it was probably for facility, to have enough facilities to use. I think that the swimming people did really well working together because Jack Pettinger was so good about working with our women's people as well as the men's. Facilities were tough.
Donna Shalala, did she play a role in this?
Or
were you pretty established by that?
We were pretty well established by the time Donna came in. I know some of the other chancellors were never very happy to see me.
Well, tough. What impact did the Rose Bowl victories and the improved economic situation of the athletic department have on women's athletics?
I think it probably took a lot of pressure off. We didn't have to think about what sport are we going to drop next in order to meet the requirements of Title IX, and that's big. I think it's a lot. There's no resentment, I don't think, at all anymore. Everybody, it's kind of more of a team thing.
Title IX was a bit of a dirty word and how can I say this? A point of friction between men's and women's athletic administrators. I don't sense that at all anymore. No. I think it's way old news. Is that a fair estimation?
It is way old news. We probably still have cabinets full of paperwork that we had to do, but it is. And it was good. It's good it happened. it's also good that we're now reaping the benefits, and it's positive.
The coaches that you hired, you didn't have a lot of pools of women coaches to draw from necessarily. How did you balance hiring women versus men's coaches for women's sports?
Well, you look for the most qualified people. That's the main thing. You tried to. I always tried to find if there were some really good women coaches. I would look at them first, obviously.
Right, because right now there are still men's coaches in women's sports, but there's precious few women's sports in men's sports.
Women coaches in men's sports, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That I see that changing over time, just because there'll be more and more qualified young women who've competed at the collegiate level. And is there a political issue with men coaching women at the college level?
I don't think so.
Really?
No.
Do you think some people find it that way?
I can't speak for other people. I haven't felt that.
Yeah.
I haven't felt that. Although, I think sometimes people will say, well, there are qualified women in these particular sports. Why didn't you hire one?
How have you worked to help fundraising for women's athletics? And that's a huge part of the college athletic machinery, is how to augment your budgets. Where are women on that continuum?
Well, I remember way back when we started out with the Women's Intercollegiate Sports Club, it was really on a kind of a low level. We sold like 3 different issues of cookbooks and things like that. Thank goodness those days are over. I think, as you pointed out before, there aren't as many donations from women now yet because just the base is still like football and stuff. But we just try to encourage it. People, I think as we get more fans, like we've seen with volleyball, we're going to get more contributions, and same with hockey. I think you can see that in some of the scholarships now. There are more scholarships for women that have been funded through, families.
You mentioned you played lacrosse and hockey when you were in college. What sport would you have played if you were a young woman coming of age now?
Now? That's a good point, a good question. I wasn't never tall enough for basketball.
But you were quick and you had a good left hand.
Quick, yeah. No, I'm not golf, that's for sure. I don't really know.
I'll let you think about it. We'll
maybe
be back.
There wouldn't be one for me now.
We'll let you think about it, and we'll come back in a second. Stay with us.
I know, lightweight crew.
There you go, lightweight crew.
For more information about the show or to be in the audience for future tapings, go to www.wisconsinreflections.wisc.edu.
We're back with Kit Saunders-Nordeen, the founding mother of University of Wisconsin Women's Athletics. Kit, you had a great moment this past year, the 30th anniversary of the birth of the women's athletic program here at Madison. Tell me what that was like.
It was so amazing that how many of our young athletes came back, and some of them have as much gray hair as I do now, and they were the ones that really helped get things started as students. And the press, it was so great. The press kept trying to get them to say that they resented all the things they had to do in order to play, and they said, heck no, we were doing just what we wanted to do, and we loved it.
And they had control over it.
And a lot of them are coaching, and in fact, one of those young women who helped us get started is Judy Sweet, who went on to become the first woman president of the NCAA.
Which is,
I love that.
Yeah, and that's a living legacy of the work that you did. What work has yet to be done?
Well, I think, gosh, that's a hard question. I guess it's the same as in both men's and women's athletics. Just continuing to make sure that the experience is a good one, and not just a totally high pressure experience. I think some things that they can take with them in their lives. I think that's big.
I I know you're kind of humble about all this, but I do think there are historical implications. And as I said, as a father of 2 young women who competed in high school, I'm truly grateful for the work that you and all the other women who pioneered this athletics for women did, because I know my daughters have benefited so much from it.
That's great.
And
I love to hear that.
well, and it's the truth. Do you remember the Nike commercial where they said a woman who plays sports is 20% less likely to be in an abusive situation and 30% less likely to have an unplanned pregnancy?
Yeah.
And it was a beautiful 30-second spot, and it was this homage to women's athletics. And anyone who has women in their lives or young women in their lives has to be grateful for what you've done. And I know everyone at Wisconsin
Well, I
is
feel
too.
like I was dropped in the right place at the right time for me, because I always wanted it for myself and it wasn't there. And then all these young students are willing to work because they wanted it, and it was great to be able to help them.
Do you hear back from them any personally now?
Yes.
What do they say?
Well, they come back for reunions. A lot of them come back for sports events here. They just, and some of them, most of them are not in athletics. One of them has gone into business, and they feel like what they did here did give them confidence that they could make things happen, and I think that's a big thing.
So when you were selling the Christmas trees, did you have to cut them down?
We
too?
did. We borrowed this old van from Lathrop Hall, and we stuffed about 10 of us in there, and we drove up northern Wisconsin, just north of the Dells. Somebody had a tree farmer they knew, and we get out there and we cut down. Well, the kids took orders in the dorms first. We got out there and we cut down the trees, and we used to have a little fire and made some hamburgers or something or hot dogs, and then we stuffed all the trees and ourselves back in the van. And I was so sure that we were going to get arrested somewhere along. It was so illegal. However many, and that was an old van, and we drove old fleet cars back then too. Sometimes, to travel, we'd have to scratch the ice off the windows. We went up to River Falls or someplace to get the ice off it with our fingernails.
Well, every time I see a Christmas tree now, I'll remember what you did for women's athletics at Wisconsin. Kit, thanks so much for joining us today, and thank you for joining us as well. Stay with us next week for Wisconsin Reflections, and thanks for watching, everybody. See ya.
The preceding program was produced by the University of Wisconsin in association with the Big Ten Network.